We're live and we're recording. We're good to go, Nancy. So for the people at home, we're just waiting for a few stragglers to come in and sit down, and we're going to start the meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Hornies Mills Hall for the Community Town Hall. This is regarding the community engagement agreement that is between Strada and NDACT. We're going to show you a presentation, and Carl will take you through that. And afterwards, Kevin Powers from Strada will be speaking. And then we're going to let you have an opportunity to ask questions. We are hoping this meeting to be a civil, respectful communication with everyone. So we'd appreciate it if we could just remain calm and listen and be educated by what we're about to tell you. I'd like to introduce you to Carl Kosek.
Yes, that means I can't yell at anyone. It's totally out of character for me. Community engagement town hall. All right, we should have a slide come up. Everybody here knows that NDACT is about. NDACT got organized in 2009. Response to some land use questions in the neighborhood. As a mega core proposal. The evolution of us out of this, we had to organize. It was unbelievable how the community organized. Well, 28,000 people went, and maybe most of you were there. We gave Vanderzag's Rush on 124 and was fed by the Canadian Chefs Council. We gave all 1,000 people. Well, very good work on. So the Strada project proposal. That's an interesting one, Paul. Is this for Kevin Council?
Sure. Yes.
Thank you everyone for coming in tonight. It's great to see everyone out, especially on such a nice night. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for the interest in this project. Just a little bit about Strada before talk about Strada is an Ontario-based company. It's a leading supplier in Ontario of aggregate and recycled aggregate. We operate 3 active pits in Ontario and have 12 depots. That's the extent of operations in Ontario. It is a small aggregate company.
The site in question is currently an active pit. It's located near mine in Lakeland. There has been active gravel extraction at this site since 2004, so almost 20 years now. The site itself is approximately 350 acres. And the excavation right now is taking place at about 1.5 meters above the water table. Now, the proposal for quarry, between a quarry and a pit, is the pit is sand and gravel. It tends to happen above the water table, whereas the quarry takes extraction below the water table typically requires blasting. So the proposal is to turn the existing pit, which is 350 acres, into a quarry. So we would be digging below the water table within the footprint of the existing pit. It would be inside of that, so estimated that the quarry would be about 250 acres. The reason for this is that the area underneath where we continue for the last 20 years does contain some of the highest quality limestone available in Ontario. The Ontario Chamber of Commerce showed that Southern Ontario is running out of this type of limestone. And so this limestone would be used for housing, roads, technical studies for this began in 2020 and are ongoing. There are about 12 of these studies doing everything from hydrogeology to traffic, to noise, dust, natural environment, etc. And so those studies are underway and have been going on for about 3 years. And we're hoping to have those studies complete within the year. So that is basically an overview of the project right now. With that, I'll hand it back over to Paul to continue the presentation. I will be available.
So normally, how communities find out about these sort of things is important to register the application and applies for us. We have done that with Island Company, most everybody knows her. Community at first. Sure. Timeline here that in July, September, and October, Strada held separate meetings with Melanchthon Township, and then with us and the broader community to inform everybody what their plans. And as a board, we were sort of curious to say the least because we didn't know how to respond to that. You understand that when asked, voting nation they engage with them and they file an application. Have full well the right to say to a development friendly policy and political environment at Queen's Park. We reached out to end up, they didn't want to talk, so therefore we felt we needed to have discussions as to how January 22, we had a town hall meeting that was very well attended in Shelburne. was fully supported by the community. And that was it's some key elements to this agreement. In front of you. This communication, community engagement summaries, peer review hiring, wells and natural features are a real key part of that. Normally, the aggregate reverses back to operator. In this case, Strada has after those wells and should a license ever be granted, there's a recreation fund and some assumptions, agreements that are part of the structure. It's very difficult for us to and say that kept all the stuff the table to talk as to pick it apart. First of its kind as so
Nancy.
And try. It's gonna have our chair and then we'll get to the question.
And I'm not speaking to the podium because nobody can see me. I didn't want to see me because everybody wants to move at this. I don't want to do it. You know anything about NDACT meetings, we run them on time. We're on time, but I just wanted to bring welcome from the chair of the board, for everyone being here and people online. Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge Ralph and Mary Lynn, who are here. Ralph has recently retired from the board, but he's an honorary member for life. Mary Lynn was never officially on the board, but she's on. I just want to talk about this situation that has been going on since 2006. NDACT has been active, and we weren't just active in the migratory days. We've continued to meet every single month for all of these years. And we haven't been in a fundraising mode until now. And so I'm going to ask you as the chair, first of all, I'm going to tell you what our annual expenses are. We have a $2,000 audit. We have to do that under our articles of incorporation. We have to have insurance. That's $2,000 a month. Our web hosting is $1,000 a month. This meeting tonight with the advertising and the rent is $1,000. So with other miscellaneous expenses, we're running about $7,000 or $8,000 a year, and we need your support if we're going to continue to be able to advocate for food and water on your behalf. So there is a donation box at the back. You can e-transfer to info@ndact.com. And this isn't a one-time ask. We're going to need continued funding. And so thank you very much. And I just want to say to any attendees that are listening to the meeting via Zoom, there is a chat feature, and you can type your questions in there. And we'll interfere with your questions with the live questions in the audience. So thank you very much for coming, and have at it with your Q&As.
No, I understand it correct. We have really kind of a drill of people. 250 acres. And down, the agreement would be to allow us to do that.
Schedule that Strada is to comply. There's no application yet. And we found that the product can agree to the things that we have to agree and mostly they were not. And should they file an application, then NDACT will not. It's the point. Okay, and they work on it, yes. Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
We are 124 South Masonville. I have questions for Tara to. How many questions this morning at all? And if you need to go for half an hour, we are. The trucks are on our road. And I'm afraid to cross the road to get them in. I want to know how many trucks this is going to involve.
Please, as close to the mic as you can. They're having trouble
We
hearing.
haven't completed all of the studies so that we know exactly what it is, but our estimate is that there would be no increase whatsoever on the amount. The volume will remain the same, so you will not notice any difference in the level of traffic.
Just there's page, it's 3, there is a.
Which agreement?
Registration process, going all this is steps, and this is, you know, with the in regards to the wells and natural features.
Can you repeat the question? And if anybody else is speaking, you have to speak loud and right into the microphone, but they will repeat the question for, so the people at home can hear.
So on page 3 of the Schedule C wells and natural features, there is a section where it says registration process, but it's missing the phone number.
Yeah, we're
To
working.
notify Strada.
There it is. Yeah. They should be able to hear that.
Establish that as we have not worked on it, it's part of the work to be done. Because we're taking early well registrations, and that's a work in progress. The information and the request both Strada maintain an email, and NDACT maintains an email info@ndact.com or .ca.
Both.
In order to facilitate, we're not ready yet to do the well registration. I think we still have to discuss it.
Okay, in that situation where, for example, our we're in a natural spring, so we're gonna we are right now delaying on our years. What would be the process if it dried up in our situation?
I don't think I'm equipped to answer that at this point in time because it's an application in process and the hydrology has not been fully vetted. Yours will fall under likely the natural features part of that schedule. And we will be sure to register you and your property so that the system, once we get the system working, will do the proper testing on your facility. And should you have issues, which is why you're asking, I have committed to have a water truck there within 48 business hours, et cetera, et cetera.
And does Strada solve the problem? Like, what would be the solution? Like, would you guys, or would Strada come and dig a well for us?
If they're on how to determine.
Kevin, would you like to speak on this? Thank you.
So in the event of any well-related issues, immediately the onus is on Strata to provide you with a supply of water until it's been determined the cause of the problem. If it's a broken pump, for example, and not Strata, not on account of Strata, then there's a certain time that we'll continue to provide water, but then you'll be responsible for repairing the pump. If it's determined that it's because of Strata's
operations, then in that event, Strata would be responsible for finding a permanent solution to ensure you have a stable supply of water exactly as you have prior to.
And that would be me, because if in that application, well, that's most likely. Most of the day and prior as well. I'm just curious on how we're supposed to move forward in hypothetically, if you have any thought on any of the information of what the regular system down there, the third party, people have their own system, right, to come in and do these. How have any knowledge or trust without any they're not completely
So first off, I'll say that even if we were to submit an application for this for today, it would be a number of years before, through the application process, before we were actually digging below the water table. And so in the intervening time, you pointed out, what we want to do is set all of the wells and natural features in a given area around the potential quarry, so that we have a baseline understanding of what the water is, what the water situation is, so that we can ensure it remains that way throughout the lifetimes before. That's a good question. I am not a hydrogeologist, but that area is selected on the basis of scientific understanding of how far an impact area it could potentially have. And so I think you can rest assured that anyone that might be impacted would be available to have the area study to get that baseline understanding.
They're gonna be lost. What about?
So it's a good question. Blasting would occur about once a week, is the estimate. When Strata submits these applications, there is is a very big study that takes place around impacts of fracking. And in order to get an application to operate a quarry, we have to show that any vibration through the ground would have no impact on any of the, what they call receptors nearby. And so we would have to show that the levels of ground vibration are below the level that they could even cause cracks or anything within the structure of 150-year-old house or 200-year-old house, whatever it happens to be. So not only do we have to show that we can prove it, and the governments and peer reviewers have to accept that our findings was correct. And so, again, I would say that much like the collapsing, Strada, when it makes its application for this forum, has to show that its operations will not have an undue impact on well levels. And in the unlikely event that it does have an impact, Strada is responsible for ensuring that you have a supply of water until the solution is found. And if Strata gets fault, then we have to supply find a solution to it. And that's, it's understandable, and I'd say that one of Strata's chief concerns and areas that's studied here is around water, is around well water, and the quality and quantity of well water for surrounding residents.
So I want to know if we Strata goes into big deal of the water. What happens because I don't know the architect of the and I also have to say like maybe you get lab where maybe don't go. So I like to put it out there.
Well, so that I would say, you know, there are building a quarry or in compliance with quarry and getting a license for quarry is an incredibly complicated and complicated process that is fraught with risks for the developer. Yes, there may be limestone underneath here, but you have to assemble the land through all of the study. It's an incredibly complicated process that not everybody, not just in the company will want to go through, especially with the possibility that all of the effort, all of the money, all of the years spent looking into this might not actually end in getting it forward.
And we're all we all learn a lot. So we're all
what I can say is that this is the only quarry proposal going on in this area for limestone. And so I can't speak to you the plans of some of the companies elsewhere. I don't know. But
I have a question, first of all, I'd like to see the questions from the audience and answer them all. The question, how many times have you considered removed from the pit currently, and how much are you planning to increase?
so the question is, what is the current amount being removed from the pit, and how much would you remove from the quarry? The levels would be the same for the pit and the quarry. I had answered a question earlier around traffic, and I'd said that there would be no increase in the amount of traffic. And the reason for that is there would be no difference in the amount of aggregate extracted. It's just in the quality of the aggregates that's extracted.
When you say your operation is 350 acres, is that including the Prince's old farm of 100 acres that's not surrounded by the berm?
The 350 acres is the, sorry, the question is, what does the 350 acres comprise? That is the active extraction area and the boundaries of the quarry.
Is that the area surrounded by the berm, only by the berm, or is it more than that?
No, it's surrounded by the berm.
So what are you going to do with the Prince's old farm?
The question is, what's going to be done with the farm? I have not seen what the completed studies are on archaeology, and so we'll have a better idea of that when those studies have been completed.
So there is a chance that that will be a quarry also.
The question is there a chance that that would be a quarry also? I can't answer that question. I'm not certain. I'm sorry.
Hi, sorry I arrived late, so this question might have been asked. Is the surrounding, you're testing the wells, is the area of 1 kilometer, around 3 or 10?
Yeah, so the question is the radius around the potential quarry that's tested for water and wells. I'm afraid I do not have the exact answer for that. But if you talk to me after.
It's in the document somewhere. I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know the exact.
So let's say if it's 3, let's go around 5.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't include Hornings Mills. So if the water's redirected, we're not covered from any insurance or anything because we're not within that radius. Is that correct?
Repeat the question. Can you repeat it? Because they can't hear this.
Sure. So the question is, would wells outside the radius being studied be eligible for compensation in the event there were problems from those wells? To that I would say, if it's shown that the impacts on your water levels are a result of the quarry and the quarry's operation, then yes, you would be compensated and covered for that.
So we would be responsible in getting lawyers and doing all of the studies until it's proven that it is directly from that. And if it is, you'll cover those expenses, but if it's not, we cover those expenses.
Sure.
So the process is not determined yet because hydrology has not been peer reviewed, and Strada has hired our community trusted peer reviewer to do just that. And we will hope that between him and Strada, they will figure out what wells to test and monitor. We ask you to put your address down, and we will say to you that should the system decide you're not part of the testing scope, we'll give you a really good reason why that is not. But having you on the list as wanting to be tested puts some onus on the Hydro-G everywhere to have your well monitored and participate.
So if we live in Hornings Mills, we can want to have our well tested and then we're covered?
If you live in Hornings Mills, please register your well. And should Strada decide it is not within the testing scope, at least you're on record that you wanted to be on testing scope.
Please, all other facilities and solely, miners and stuff.
So the question is, will we be ceasing all other activities and solely mining limestone? The answer to that would be yes, once we have extracted the existing overburden, the sand and gravel that is above the limestone, then we would just be digging for limestone at that point.
I'm assuming that you're going to go below the water table, and therefore you'll have to pump in order to be able to mine what's down there. Where are you pumping to?
So the question is, where would we be pumping to? That is part of the ongoing studies and site plans that are being developed right now. And so we will have a better answer for that once those plans are complete.
The next question related to that is, I'm sure that the water will have dust and whatnot in it. Will you be filtering that?
So the question is, will we be filtering the water that's used for the quarry? Generally, it's a closed loop system within a quarry. The water is essentially used to clean off the stone. Yes, it does contain dust, etc., but it is put into settling ponds where the dust is sent to the bottom, but the water is continually used within a loop within the quarry.
Guess what I want to know, are you open for comments or are we just in a question and answer? So are we having a comment section later? Okay. Okay, well, I'm gonna ruffle some feathers because I know you won't be happy. I'm gonna congratulate Kevin for doing such a good job to get NDACT on board so quickly and so easily. Excellent way to, get your company to go to the next step. I'm not sure that any of the stuff in this isn't already covered under other government regulations on what you would be responsible for. I'll tell you that NDACT from the beginning has asked us not to be involved with the studies until they got their agreement. We didn't know you had an agreement until I think it was June. Kevin's already mentioned that those studies will probably wind up by the end of the year. Well, if they haven't started, they're not going to be winding up. I didn't listen to NDACT. I had studies done on my property. It'll be interesting. I have significant wetland. I also have a flowing well or artesian well, whatever you want to call it. I had the hydrologist, Keisha White, come to the house. She thought this was a perfect well to monitor. She left saying, I'm going to order the equipment and I'll get right back to you. She got back to me. She said, I have the equipment. Can I set up a date to come and put it in? I said, yes. We set up a date. She called that date. I'm sick. I can't get here. I never heard from her again. That was the beginning of last fall. I contacted her in the spring. I'm sorry, Mr. Fryer, we can't monitor your well. It's a flowing well. So all you people with artesian wells, you're not going to be on the monitoring program. You won't be able to sign up for it because they can't monitor it. So, I mean, all this, the science hasn't changed. You said from the beginning that you're not going to oppose as long as the science supports it. Well, science is an ever evolving They change science daily because oh, we made a mistake. Our science wasn't correct yesterday. We'll go with the new science today. It's the same as statistics. Depending on what data you put into it, you can get whatever result you want. Strada's going to come up with every possible reason not to recognize significant wetlands, not to recognize our well. I mean, it's a company. It's obvious. I don't believe there is a solution. I don't believe there is a solution to a quarry. A quarry is an unknown. We don't know. I don't care what science mind you are, you don't know what it's going to do until after the fact. There have been no solutions out there for after the fact. Bringing a pump truck to my house isn't going to give me the same quality water that I have now. It isn't going to regenerate my wetlands.
They didn't have to go through the municipality. It would be a done deal. They never even got to the application process. They never had a shovel in the ground. Okay? No, they didn't. And then Stratus, okay. So this was, so if they had reached out to us and we said, no, we don't want anything to do with you. And this has been 2 years and we did just get the agreement signed in June. So it hasn't been a secret for months. It took 2 years of negotiating with Strata at the table. If they had reached out to us and we said no, and their studies get done, we'll have 45, or I don't know if it's increased to 90 days to look at their thousands and thousands of pages of data and try and muster some sort of a defense and raise, I don't know, $800,000. So. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Again, it's Nancy Noble. I would appreciate people saying their name and where they live before they ask their question. As a retired school teacher, I need to have you identified and where you live. That's all I want to say.
So repeat it for me.
And it's got an environment impact study, when it's a state government area and wasn't accepted to do.
So we were opposed to the mega quarry because we were just hit with an application and nothing that was within the 22,000 some pages seemed to make any sense. I'm not saying Strada's application makes sense because we don't have one. We're not supportive of Strada filing an application. All we have tried to do with Strada is have a terms of engagement so that they are more transparent with their study material, that they hire peer reviewers that we trust in order to study those materials, in order to ascertain if it is sound or not. Now, the quarry is not, where the quarry application is not part of the mega quarry lands. That might be a technicality or not, I don't know, for those who ask. The environmental assessment that was put on the mega quarry lands is still valid at this point in time. So look at all the processes and look at the development friendly government we have at Queen's Park. This just defines as to how we feel Strada needs to treat the community. Strada is a legal business. There's nothing you can do about people wanting to file applications for pits or quarries. What makes this different is that pre-application, they have agreed to a certain set of conduct, and that approach is something we support.
Hi, because Nancy asked, I'll say my name, Sheila Hardy. I live up the street in Hornings Mills. Not to flog a dead horse, but in Schedule C on page 12, about wells and natural features, it lists dug and bored wells, driven wells, drilled wells, but not artesian nor flowing wells. So if they aren't covered or they're part of natural features, that would be much more difficult to maybe monitor. And also people don't want to lose the artesian wells, and the spring water. They'd much rather not have it replaced by Strata with a dug well.
The mega quarry was proposed in 2006. There's not been one change to the Aggregate Resources Act that would prohibit that very same thing from happening today. And that's not a problem NDACT can solve. That's a problem voters can solve by looking at who you're voting for, not who your grandparents voted for, and keep voting for those same patterns. Until there's change at Queen's Park, and it has to come from the electorate because we are the government. NDACT can't solve that. So I'm appealing to everyone. Carl's mentioned our development-friendly provincial government, and it's true. So you really need to think about where you're voting. A vote is not a wasted vote because you're not voting the way we've always voted in Dufferin County. Nothing's going to change until we make it change.
I have a question. Thank you. I have a question regarding the explosives that you use. What do you use to do the make the explosions? Still can't hear, sorry. Okay, the question is, what explosives do you use for this quarry work?
So the question is what explosives are used? I'm afraid I do not know, but if you give me your contact information, we can provide that to you.
I might suggest that in most quarry operations, the product is called ANFO, which is a combination of several chemicals. I forget all of them. Part of it is fertilizer plus diesel oil. Do you know what percentage of the diesel oil is actually unexploded and goes into the water?
So the question is, do I know what
percentage in an explosion with the ANFO? Yep. Are you aware of the percentage that is calculated that is unexploded and goes into the water as diesel?
Sorry, I'm just repeating it because the people at home can't hear from that microphone. And so the question is, what is the percentage of diesel oil that is unexploded after an explosion from these? And I'm afraid I do not know the answer to that.
Have some inkling of that from the mega quarry. The issues have not changed. I agree with Mr. Fryer that the science has not changed. The same issues in the mega quarry will confront us here. And this is the thin edge of the wedge, because if this is approved, there will be many people encouraged by the progress you've made, and that will now open the door to much more. And the problems, as also was mentioned, are not known. We do not know the impacts of this operation in this area. And I understand that it is a complicated issue,
Because I know, having bought gravel, probably coming from Strada pit, to do improvements on my property. And having built a house about 15 years ago, I know the importance of the gravel and of the aggregates. So I'm conflicted in that sense. I understand the issues there. However, with the sensitive wetlands that we have and the limestone, which we know is a mega resource worth billions of dollars, you open the door and show that it can be done, and others will follow. If not Strata, then somebody else will apply. If you've gone through the process and have secured the rights to do this, and then 10 years from now, you just take a couple more farms, because after all, they've moved away with the problems that they've been facing for those 10 years. So then you simply expand. If it's not another company, it will be Strata expanding. And I think this is a bad move.
So if I could just address the concern around Strata expanding, any attempt to expand an existing quarry requires an entirely new license application.
So if I can just bring it back again, this problem is a government problem. NDACT can't change the ARA. We can only do what we can. Sure, we would all love to, but we can only deal with what we can deal with. And there is no application filed right now. Strata has not filed an application. So for us to say this or this or this, and they have agreed to hire and pay for our community trusted hydrologist, Gary Hunter, which gives me some peace of mind. And also, NDAC, if the studies, if the science supports this, NDAC has said we will not oppose it. Anyone in this room can start your own grassroots organization up and oppose the application. Hi, my name's Bernadette Hardacre. I'm from Orangeville, and I've been following and participating with NDAC for many years. My question is just, I wonder if Carl or Kevin can give us a bit of a timeline going forward, just so that we have some idea of context as far as when are the studies supposed to be done? How long would it take for an application to go? I just want to know how much time we have.
So the question is timelines on this. So part of the agreements includes the need for NDACT to do peer reviews on our studies. I said our studies would be wrapping up, with this year, but some of our timeline will depend on how long those peer reviews take before we submit an application. Once an application is submitted, that process generally takes 2 to 4 years, closer to 4 years generally, before either an application is accepted or declined. There's also the possibility of an LPAT review, which would be the Land Use Planning Tribunal of Ontario, which would increase the amount of time by another year or 2. So there are still a number of years left before this process comes to a conclusion.
We have the only horse farm located directly south of the current pit. Once they start blasting, it will impact our animals, their respiratory systems, our crops, our water quality, as well as the value of our farm. What happens when our farm loses its value, our livelihood, and the health of the animals?
So in general, we have to show through the course of the studies that the quarry would have no adverse impact on the horses, no adverse impact on their crops and their livelihood as well. And so we have to demonstrate that through the course of our studies.
Any further questions from the audience? Yes.
Rob Strang, Orangeville. Does this process look at the end game, like what the community will be left with when Strada's done? Because I know like the mega quarry, there was the ridiculous scenario of pumping incredible amounts of water in perpetuity. I hope that this anticipates something different, better. Seems if limestone's taken out of the community, something good should be left in its wake. Does this anticipate that?
Yeah, so the question is, what happens, what's required after the quarry has ceased operations? And the answer to that is that the government of Ontario requires, and Strada is obviously committed to the rehabilitation of the quarry. And that will take place as it's called progressive rehabilitation. So as sections of the quarry are completed, those areas are rehabilitated with native plants, species, etc., to ensure that it is brought back to a condition close to what it was beforehand.
Thank you. How deep do you plan to go?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that at this point.
Sure don't have a lot of answers tonight, do you?
True, as I mentioned at the beginning.
Honestly, representing the company, I see a lot of voids in your knowledge. What's going on here?
True.
Sure, thank you.
The question is,
how deep?
So again, I don't have the exact depth, but I can get that for you. The reason I'm here is I'm not, and we explained this at the beginning of the meeting. I don't think you were here for that. I'm not a technical expert. I helped negotiate these agreements on behalf of Strada. And so I don't have all of the answers to technical questions, but I can get those for you.
But you just said that you would restore the pit at the bottom, or however deep, which you can't answer. You said you're going to restore native plants, what, 200 feet down? Is that what you're going to do? What, a sheer cliff wall or something? And 200 feet down, you're now just going to start putting, what, natural plants? Are you kidding me?
So but what I would say to those comments is there has to be a full rehabilitation plan that is included in the application that goes through when and how the area will be completely rehabilitated.
Any further questions? Yes.
What is the timeline for residents to ask to have their wells monitored? Even because we do not know what the areas, we do not know what the test area is right now. What I'm hearing is you're suggesting that everybody registers their property to have their wells monitored. What is the timeline to have that done before the application?
So I'll continue to ask you to register your well. The hydrologists have not yet given the full area of what needs to be studied, but we would want the same experts to say to you You registered your well, and for this and this and this reason, you're not part of the scope of the testing. I think that's just a self-defense mechanism. And I would hope the more wells get registered, the broader testing area we're going to get out of it. So that'd be my answer too.
Yeah, I apologize for not saying my name last time, Tim Fryer. I'm on the 5th line. Yeah. So I'm within close proximity. Didn't bring my glasses. I apologize. I can't read this, but I did read the agreement online. And in that, I believe I read that there would be some type of compensation. Let's say my wetland went dry, then there would be a compensation for that. But I don't know how you come up with the value of a wetland.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Put it up, please.
And wetland is not an individual, yeah, fine. The wetland is not an individual value, it's a value to everywhere. Okay.
So are you referring to the section that says five, it says if it is determined the operation at the pit quarry cannot obviously and definitely be excluded as a cause, Strada shall accept the solution determined by the responsible agency or the ministry. So the ministry is involved from the very first ticket on. Strada shall be responsible for funding quantifiable and qualifiable losses of the affected participated landowner related to the loss of the natural feature. So quantifiable is through loss of income if you're on a fish farm. And qualifiable is through replacement cost. That's pretty straight up.
That's straight up. So, like I say, I don't know what value you put on a wetland.
Well, they'd have to replace it.
They'd replace the wetland.
That is correct. If they drain the water, they have to find ways to put the water back in.
Okay. If you said you rehabilitate the quarry after it's finished, would it, if it's below the water table, would it not simply fill up with water again? It'd be a big lake?
The question is, for the rehabilitation of the quarry, would it require, would it just not fill up because it is below the water table? Through all kinds of progressive measures, there would be some water elements there, but not necessarily the entire, floor of the quarry would be water. And so it is not just, it would not just be a giant lake.
So I'm behind the podium now, so nobody can see me. I think we're going to wrap it up unless there's any more pressing questions. I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank Carl for your presentation and your pink shirt, as always. I want to thank Strada for coming to the table. I want you to realize that one of the components in the agreement is if our trusted hydrologist expert does not feel that the science is sound, Strada has said they will not proceed. They've signed this agreement, so you have to take them at face value. And once again, we NDACT cannot fund this on our own.
If you want us to continue to advocate and protect water, we need donations, we need money to continue our annual operating costs. So thank everyone for coming. Is there anyone else on the board? Should introduce the board that's here. Carl Kozak, he's been on the board since 2006-9 when it was first formed. Our honorary board member of Ralph and Mary Lynn Armstrong are here. They were there from the beginning. Julie Roy is a new board member. Nancy Malik was one of the originals, left for a time, come back. Natalie Kotick, okay. It was fairly new. She's been with us about a year. Len, the master of all things technical. Len Gashardi has been with us about a year. And yeah, I haven't forgotten Darcy. Darcy's coming, yeah. And Darcy Timmons has been with us about 6 months. And we are missing Brian Bell, our vice chair. He was here earlier, but wasn't feeling well. So again, thank you for coming. If you have any more questions that you would like to direct on this matter, info@NDACT.com, NCA, either one. And you can just go to our website. It's there. Submit your questions. We're going to start keeping a list of frequently asked questions. So once we get that compiled, I would say check there first. But don't hesitate to send your questions. And as Carl said, please, in the meantime, so the next steps, you can pre-register to participate in the Wells and Natural Feature Protocol at the desk. Carlos, we are all heavily suggesting that you do that. We don't know anything until we see the application. But we have a good guy in looking out for the hydrology studies. Sign up for the newsletter and any further questions. You can always send them to Kevin Powers as well. His email is there. So thank you for coming and participating, and we may see you at another meeting.